Okay, part two. It's still cold out here. Some warm days coming up, though. We're excited about that.
The rest of the
Coffee,
week.
dessert, rest of the week. So let's talk a little bit more podcasts because again, like I think you guys, first of all, again, I don't want to like go into all the details of it because you should go and listen to it. And there will be more stuff which we can talk about too at some point in the future. And the other thing I forgot to mention, I think you mentioned your nickname at some point. His Instagram handle is Captain Buckets, and I think you go by Buckets for friends and friendly racers and all that in the scene. So yeah, it's from basketball.
Yeah, I don't know how basketball nickname stuck, but
yeah.
That was my IG handle when I came into the community, and
okay.
It's just been that since.
Like it. It works. And it's different from a lot of other ones probably. So so the podcast came about in 2016, you and a few friends. Tell us a bit how it came about, maybe some of the highlights, and you've already talked a little bit too that with having people and leading the conversations, organizing, there's also some people and we disagree with what you're saying, but let's hear it. So what's been going on with that?
So again, me, Cisco, and Gabe, we're hanging out, Bike Stop Astoria one night, chilling.
These are people that you met through kind of the Messenger community?
Community. So I met Gabe at Amazon, we were both messengers.
Okay.
And then just hanging out with him, and he'll be like, yo, come meet to Queens, which was, he would go to Bike Stop Astoria, which at the time Cisco was the manager of. And he'd be like, yo, just we out to Queens. And for me, it wasn't much of a biggie because it was right over the RFK bridge.
Yeah.
And since I live in Spanish Harlem, in Astoria, as long as it's just a bridge difference. So, because, a lot of people, if you're from one part of the borough, you hate traveling to any of the other boroughs, which I don't get. It's 15 minutes everywhere. Chill out. But whatever. I do get the bridge, though. When I did live in Brooklyn for a while, having to commute that bridge every day, and especially during like rush hour times. Yeah. No, Brooklyn Bridge, Williamsburg, all of them, all of them.
There's one hill in the way. Yeah. It's a little narrow always.
Even Manhattan Bridge, you get down through the churn.
Yeah,
and all
that's
that.
why I take most of the time. Yeah.
So I definitely get it. I get it. But we're in the basement, and we're just going through ideas. I was listening to a lot of Joe Rogan at the time, and still to this day. But I was like, yo, I want to start a series where I hear stories about like people cat sixing in the streets. Because like I just told you, I'm not too far removed from like trying to like randomly race people in the streets. Like, what's up? We out? We going? And,
so just so we make that clear for everybody, cat sixing is basically you decide, and maybe the other person too, that you're riding a street, some other guy's passing you, or you can pass, or like or you pass the other person, and all of a sudden it turns into this like little
impromptu
race that sometimes both sides are in on, sometimes not. It all depends on the dynamics. It's again, it's being, I think, by the more savage folks laughed upon or not being, but it happens. Let's just put it that way. You can have whatever opinion you want on it. It happens.
Or even in the park, like if you see a roadie doing something, or it just happens. When you get two competitive people, like you said, one person might know, one person might not know.
I've seen passing on the next hill, and you're like.
I've seen bike versus e-bike. I've seen e-bike versus scooter. I've seen bike versus bike. So anything where it's just like
like an e-bike passes me on the bridge, going up the bridge, and I'm like, oh, that's a nice draft. I'm gonna get in that, and then I'm just gonna have, and then do I need to do that? No. Is it fun? Sometimes it is.
Especially when the guy starts looking back, and you're like,
so that's what actually happened on the way here. I was like, I'm running a little bit late, going up the bridge, and there's a guy on a road bike like right in front of me. And he like keeps looking back. I'm like, there's literally no reason to look back for him because it's like, there's no car coming at this point. I'm like, I'm just gonna like keep riding here. Then he keeps looking back and like pedals real hard. And it's like, are we racing? I think maybe we are racing, but I'm running late. I'm going a little harder now. So yeah, it's stuff like that. So yeah.
So if we were on Cat 6 right now, that was your Cat 6 story today.
Yeah.
And when every guest that we used to have,
I love that feature.
You needed a Cat 6 story. One person got away with it before. That was Jason Infinity. We let him slide.
Without a
Cat 6 story. But since that day, and it kind of like, we just kind of forgot. Like we had asked him for a Cat 6, but then he just like kept being coy with us. And like we just kept moving on for time's sake, and then we forgot to get it. But you do not complete the episode without a Cat 6 story anymore. Even if you're just whatever, we need a story.
I love that actually because, again, like, we all shouldn't be doing it, maybe, or whatever you want to have. Again, like, I think that's the official, like, party line policy, kind of, right? Don't do it, but it happens.
It happens, yeah. And when you do it, if you're knowingly doing it, be safe, yo, because you're still in the streets and anything can happen.
Appreciate the disclaimer,
yeah, for real.
No, I mean, but no, for real, like, so, again, I love it because I think it's this little nugget, and there's always a lot of people who laugh about Cat 6 racing, right? And yet, like, I think it's part of the culture a little bit. So
definitely.
Anyway, so that's part of the element. But you guys had like a ton of guests from, again, race organizers, random people in the community, racers, fast racers, people like Lucas Burnell who are like, I guess they're like content creators,
yeah,
to some
right,
extent, but also fast riders and always been racers too.
I'm gonna call him an historian now because he's definitely
he's an
historian of the culture. So and like,
his early camera footage with like before GoPro, he had like a bike helmet with like two full-on like camcorders basically attached. It was insane. Anyway, but
insane. So shout out to the podcast because, like I said, we started in the basement. I was talking to Cisco about starting a podcast where I hear people's race stories, and at the time, there was so much gossip, especially if anybody knows, if you're on Facebook, Fixed Gear NYC was a big platform, especially around that time. It was growing. It was almost at its peak.
Anybody here it had and still has a following.
Oh, and still has a crazy following.
Stories going on there.
Yeah, still to this day. So he came up with the Chismes part, and he's like, yo, we should do something where we hear the gossip that's going on. And, brainstorming, we decided to call it Cat 6 Chismes. And then I got my boy Clyde to do the logo.
We got a cat here.
Which is basically Butch the alley cat from Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
So he gave us our first design, and then we were well on the way. Cisco, being an audio engineer before in his past life, he had some equipment that we were able to like start recording our podcast. And with everything, it's a growing process. So like I said, our first episode was in the basement. Then we moved up to the first floor because the acoustics were a little bit better. But then Cisco came up with the idea of holding in the bowling alley, and we never looked back.
But it's kind of crazy to think about. You got music, you got bowling pins, you got people talking and like yelling, and I mean here is like fairly quiet, but even there I still get a lot of good amount of background noise. But you guys had pretty good sound equipment, I think. And
that the ambience helps. And just the background noise that even if you're not fully paying attention to us, because that's a podcast, so you're probably riding somewhere or something.
Yeah.
You're just hearing the pins break or just like hearing the music. You're definitely going to have something entertaining along with the podcast.
Exactly. Like you had the background. I feel like it feels natural. It feels like not overproduced and all that. It feels like you're not creating some piece of art. You're keeping it real there, I think. And that was great.
Yeah. And that was our drawing point. Like we were real guys. We were real people trying to get real conversations and a real chance to have a platform and not kind of like not be behind the keyboard or not be behind the screen. Like we wanted to hear these people's voices, and at that point, like I said, the community has so much, I guess, animosity or some type of beef towards each other. So like we were like, yo, here's a platform where you could just put it on wax, and we'll document everything. You say what what you do. You say what you want. Whatever is off limits is off limits to you. We'll ask you, but if you decide not to answer, then that's on you, bro.
Yeah.
We're not gonna try to funnel you into any conversation. But that's basically how we started. And then you learn a lot all around doing the podcast. You learn about people. You learn about definitely their lives, because you kind of got to get into their life so you can interview them, have questions about them. You build these relationships that last. Like Brent Barber, Lucas, Terry, like these are Chris, Dominican Chris, Vic. Like these are people that I have relationships with now, and all because not just all what I thought was going to be just racing I have connections with, but now being able to like sit down and get to know somebody intimately and know what facets of racing they bring or what facets of the community they bring, and it's been great because you'll see once you build your catalog and you look back and you're like, damn, we interviewed those people, we interviewed that guy, that girl. Like,
you always learn something too, right? I feel like from every guest you take something away, you learn something, you make a connection, you hear something you might not otherwise hear, so that's pretty cool. So that part is definitely cool. You mentioned some of the controversy. You don't have to go into all the details because I know, like you've already said, like once you start that, you're positioning yourself in some way, and you have to think about how do I position myself, or do I just talk the way I always talk, or do I have to change that? And I think I noticed that because maybe I have a few more guests who are like in official positions that they're representing a club or they're a race organizer. They have to play the political game a little bit more than some other people who are not. And I think that's so. In some ways, it's logical that you get like different ways of approaching it. But what were some of the highlights, lowlights of the show where you're like, this was a really cool conversation, this is an episode I want to point people to, because you don't have to give all your content away, but like what was, because for example, one I listened to was long story short, 2 different approaches to like what should happen to, was it the monster, it was one of the races, was it Monster Cross? It was basically a monster track, monster track, and it was about, well, participation numbers have been dwindling, and is this because of the way it's run, or is this because of the community changing and people not showing up? So it was pretty heated. I would say it was a pretty heated conversation, like where people were definitely not like on the same page, and neither one of them was like, they both felt that one was maybe more the attack and one was more like defensive about it, but neither of them was like, it wasn't like an amicable position, like it wasn't just like a friendly conversation. It was definitely, and you guys try to be in between, mediating a little bit, but I think you guys were leaning a little bit with it was a little bit an old versus new guard thing, so you guys were the newer guys, 2 younger, right? So I think I could feel that. So that was one example, I think, where you have conflict, which is normal too, right? We have that in the road racing community too, and race organizers always get like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Do this differently. This is stupid. Like, what about, and then sometimes they have good reasons, sometimes maybe it's just because we've done it that way for a long time. So this is one example, but maybe there's some other things where you're like, this was really cool to talk about, or this was really difficult to talk about.
So, oh man, and I'm going through the catalog in my head, and I remember this specific episode, and just being there, and trying to, like, being in the middle, and you don't ever want to pick a side. You just want to be a journalist, and you just want to get the facts out, and you're gonna have an opinion, but you got to try not to have your opinion, and it gets kind of spicy. But and then guests will look at you like, you're on my side, right? You're on my side, and then you're still like, So next question. But
I love that format that you had 2 different people, because I always bring one for that reason. Someone, it's always easier, right? And you can like, oh yeah, okay,
I think having the personality like Gabe, man, and we meshed well. Like I said, we were friends before we started, and then like our chemistry just together, like. It's not like even like a good cop, bad cop thing, because some episodes have been like that as well. But just having our dynamic really worked, and then Cisco chiming in from time to time, and then in season 4 we got Mike on board, so Mike was able to chime in, and just having these different experiences, because I consider myself the racer, right, and the messenger. So I feel like I was the street and the pro. Gabe was the mechanic, and he was the host, and he was an MC at any of the events that we were asked to. So that was his angle. Then you got Cisco as a manager of all different things, Chrome, Bike Stop, our team. And we all had different views, but the same insight, and that was pretty cool. And we really didn't have to censor anyone most of the time. The only episode we decided to censor was Soho.
Yeah, which you guys said. I thought that was interesting, but go ahead. Yeah.
And at that time, it was season 1, right? So like, we were very new to, while I was growing in the community, and whoever knew Gabe and Cisco already knew them, coming together, we were trying to grow. And at that time, and still to this day, cancel culture is big. Yeah. So like, we didn't want to get off onto the wrong foot. And like I told you, I had somebody boycott my race and like send emails and text messages like, yo, don't show up to this race.
This stuff is going on, like you said, all the time in the community. Yeah. And I have opinions about it that, like, I'm exactly in that position that you were describing. It's like, I have an opinion, but like, my opinion is not like the one that only matters, right?
Yeah.
Because like it's more important for me to show the different opinions.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but keep going. No, we can talk about that more still.
Sure. Yeah, and it was just it was very early on. We didn't know which direction we were really going, and at that point, we didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but in doing so, we weren't honest with ourselves, because having censored him, our platform is basically come on to say whatever you want, and then we censor somebody. So
Right.
we're basically going against our own platform. And from that day forward, we were like, you know what, like whatever happens, happens. And
Yeah.
it was a big relief.
I appreciate that. I like that thought process. You guys talked about that too in that last episode you did last year. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's led to arguments on the podcast.
Yeah.
It's led to dicey situations, but at least I will tell you this: by the end of the podcast, everybody's going home with a better understanding of the situation, and they can make their own viewpoints and their own opinions on whatever happens. But having those hour to 2 hours together to just like talk is so big.
Yeah.
It's so big, and try to get to understand somebody, because now most of the days I don't know you behind the keyboard.
100%. That's exactly one of the major reasons why I'm doing this here.
Yeah.
Because like I see this face, and like this is a real person, and like I can see where they're coming from, because I get it. Like I could like take a snippet, and I could take the craziest thing you just said, because I can take it out of context, and then I put it in like a 10-second clip, and then like boom, it hits the Instagram, and I get more likes than just putting up a 1 hour conversation. Nobody wants to listen to an hour. I get that. A lot of people don't. But I want to like slow it down and see like this guy is like reasonable, has opinions, and it's like shit's coming from there. And maybe it's not always reasonable, but like you understand the person better,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that makes it more, like you said, the back and forth online and whatever you want to call it, cancel culture, but like the responses we get sometimes, and then immediately that person's the worst person in the world just because they said one thing and they didn't think about it, and like, yeah, they shouldn't have, but like we all make mistakes. I make mistakes, So yeah, that's my thing on it, but
Yeah,
I think we're on the same page.
Yeah, we're definitely on the same page, man. And like I said, just having to go through this and just it's definitely been a roller coaster ride with a lot more ups and more downs. Then it's chill, and I'm glad that I've been able to share this with my brothers and the experiences that we had. And like I said, I've interviewed people that they were just a YouTube person. Like I saw you on YouTube. I never thought I would be able to talk to you. And
It's awesome, yeah.
And the cycling, like I've gotten to travel. Like it's all intertwined. And then as I travel, people already hear the podcast, and I'm like, oh shit. And it's been really, really good. And we miss it, man. We miss it. So we should be coming back soon in a different capacity, but we'll
Which
be
I'm
back.
super excited about. And you said you're trying to set up actually your own little sound like studio and
That's
venue.
correct. Yeah, because with what's going on in the world, one day can switch to the next, and we've seen it. And shit can shut down, shit can reopen, and it'll just be nice to have like a safe space for us to like know that we have this for what we're trying to do. And as much as we're gonna miss the bowling alley or something, like we just don't know. So we're in the phases of planning what's gonna be next. Hopefully we can return to the bowling alley one day, but it'll also be nice having a space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure with this, right? I mean, I'm sure there's people in their head like looking at this and like, this asshole doesn't follow COVID regulations because we're sitting here and we both don't have our mask on, and like that means like you're a crazy, like, I don't know, pro-Trump, COVID, like anti-COVID, anti-vax person. It's like the real world is more complicated, and I think it's all measured. Yes, it's like it's probability management, and yeah, maybe I could put the mask on. That would be a little bit safer, but without making this another COVID episode here, I think that, but it shows like it's difficult. Like you censor.
Where we at in time?
I have to come clean. I think one person, like I wouldn't say censor, but there was like we started a conversation. It was definitely going to turn to some beef, and it was definitely going to turn to like more conversation. But we were already at like 2.5 hours, and we were freezing. It was like, I think I gotta go home. We can talk about this another time. But it's like I don't want to open this like can of worms like 5 minutes from the end. So I told him like, look, I'll not put this last 5 minutes in because it's like you just started talking about it, it's going to be incomplete and it's not going to be looking good. Like, so that's like the one thing I cut. So did you cut like swearing or so, or did you cut like something content-wise, like opinions?
So we cut the names that he dropped.
Okay.
Because at that point, the names that he mentioned were we're a big staple in the community. They're no longer in the community, but it just shows you that while they were here in that time, this is what they were doing.
And that's hard because that he might have antagonized them, and that might have meant that they would have looked at you guys and said, "Well, we don't want to come on that show."
It definitely would have led to that. And you know, we interviewed in that specific, and you can go back and listen to them. But especially in the beginning of the season, that was season 1. We interviewed everybody that was around that circle because that was a pretty big beef that was happening. And you know,
what was it about? Just the beef? What was the beef roughly about? Was it about race organizing, or was
not even?
You don't have to go into details.
With mine, it was race organizing, but those who are in the community know. I guess it was about equality, but it started with equality, but then it led into so many other things, and then you pick and choose.
Right.
And since your life is on the Instagram and stuff, people have free reign to like fight what they want to fight, and depending on somebody's influence, they can influence more people to be on one side, and that sucks because why the person might have been in the wrong, it's not to crucify them, like
100%. And I'm going to take a specific example because like I don't want to put you on the spot with you, but like and we're just going to leave the name of the event. Everybody knows it's in the community anyway. There was an event, York brought it up, where there was some, and I actually don't know the details because I haven't been able to talk to the person yet, and I would like to some point, but there's also a race organizer who's busy, fortunately for them. And they put on some Prospect Park underground racing, we're just going to call it, because I don't actually know if it was, to what extent there was like permits and sanctions, but it wasn't like a USA cycling race, which no race has to be, like by and large, you don't have to be a USA cycling approved race to have a race. Red Hook Crit wasn't, for example. There's other permits that you need though, and it was put on. My personal interpretation is that it got too big because everybody wants to put their stuff on Instagram, and then people paid attention to it in the community, and they're like, wait, it's COVID. And I think that intensified it because this had been happening before, and people were just kind of always like, it's fine, nobody cares. And I think that's this thing with a lot of the underground racing. Like as long as there isn't like one big event, which of course you could, I think the conservative stance to take here is like, you shouldn't have any of them because there's always a chance something bad happens, and then what are you gonna do? Which I get. Which I think there's a lot of people on that line. So then CRCA comes out with a statement, because I guess there were a couple of people with the CRCA logo on the jersey from one or two other sub teams.
Yeah.
From the pictures from a whole YouTube video of the race, and the race looked pretty, let's say, animated with people with different ability levels and all that. I've partaken in some underground racing in the past, not in New York City, but or like unofficial, more or less racing practice that wasn't fully sanctioned, and I wouldn't have wanted to be in that race, to be honest, at Prospect Park, because of different ability levels and people. But that's a different story. That's my personal take, right? And then CRCA has issued a statement that no CRCA members should be going to these events, which I fully stand behind as a CRCA member, because I think as a leadership, in the leadership from that organization, you have to make that statement. But it also, I think, and you mentioned that a little bit, antagonized everybody else, because it seems like CRCA is putting a lot of pressure on this event, and I think that's what happened. And that event is no more, which maybe is a good thing, it's the right thing to do, but I don't think that's how everybody sees it, let's put it that way. You don't have to go into all the details either, but what's your take?
Oh yeah, to me, look, and I've lost some people to COVID and all that, and I guess in my situation, I was looking at it like I live alone. If I decide to go race, it's still my choice. The people who are showing up, I have a rapport with. We've been together for the past. This underground races, you used to be able to get the same 20 heads at these underground races. So it will be my team. It will be DCC. It will be like, you know, any new up and comer trying to get in and get some valuable practice or training in, because
I know people close that have gone there and have learned how to bike, ride, and race there, right?
It's a great learning experience, and shout out to Corey Hilliard for putting most of these events on, because he's definitely taken the torch. And it's a feisty dog, right? That's how true it is.
Yes, that is like underlying your statement.
Right. So, we'll let the dogs
Got
go.
a full battle here.
Yeah, for real.
Oh, there's a lot of dogs. Okay, all right. Yeah.
And that's the quietest one.
Yeah.
The biggest
one,
dog
of
is the
course.
quietest one.
Always.
That's great.
I'll take the check, buddy. I'll take a little more coffee. Thank you. Yeah, so I think...
Thanks, boss.
No problem.
And like my view, I'll just wait. So
Yeah, that's fine.
thank you, boss. My view on it, like I said, while the numbers were exceedingly high, and I think that's what brought a lot of attention to it, because
I agree.
pre-pandemic, you barely get 20 races to show up. You barely get 20 races, and I guess since pandemic hit, everybody's in their house, everybody bought a bike. They got the Amazon starter kit, so you get your helmet, your kit,
You
your
guys talk
bike.
about that show. I love that, by the way. Everybody should call that the Amazon starter kit, which
Yeah,
is, you want to describe that real quick?
Your Amazon race kit, you order your parts online and everything.
You get a bike from the shop, probably, maybe order that online too, but then you go to Amazon, it's like all the Amazon links at first pop up. You get the helmet, you get the kid, and then everybody looks kind of the same. Yeah.
Pretty much. So again, at that point, it was like race at your will. But I guess it got too big because it went from having 20 riders to now we're having over 70.
Wow. Okay, I didn't realize.
Over 70.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, I showed up and I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
For a park race, like I said, getting 70 usually is a Cat 5 field
Yeah.
in Prospect
Yeah.
or somewhere Central Park, where those numbers, that's what you get.
And you have marshals and you have officials and you have like a more official setup. It's early in the morning. This is at night, which is, I think the park's similarly deserted, but yeah.
It's at night, and if it's after 9, you know, while there's still chances of things happening, because sometimes Prospect holds like the concert series and stuff like that, so you actually have to race through the people. Like I said, when the numbers were 20, nobody cared.
Yeah.
Nobody cared because there was only like 20 people out there.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't getting any attention. Not any real negative attention. I always thought, okay, this is going on. Probably better if nobody really talks about it. But
and it was the same 20 people, which again, you learn how to race together. You learn things.
And then again, it's a trust, and then if you don't do stupid shit, I don't do stupid shit, and then we don't put each other in danger.
And we both go home.
Yeah.
And we both go home.
Yeah.
But once it got to like 70, then there was some crashes. Then there was media coverage everywhere through people's phones.
Yeah.
And then seeing actually fans, because there were people on the sides not even
Yeah,
racing.
I saw that. I was like, damn. I mean, we're not talking about underground racing anymore. This is like there's
This is
more
an
people
event.
on the start line than at on the start finish line at CRCA races.
And I think that might have bugged some of them out too. Seeing that start line, and that's like, wait, we're the ones that throw races.
Yeah,
What-
I can't speak for those people, but I totally get that view. I think a lot of it is again framed by COVID, right? And that there's people congregating, whether on the bike or off the bike, and people take all kinds of different views on COVID, I think. But again, I think I'm on the more conservative side too. But then again, I raced last summer at a race too, and then we were out there, and that race promoter also got
Slack or like.
I'm gonna say bullied into not putting on the last race because one person at least kind of like holds into their mask, and then okay, well then you don't have accountability in the community. I get that, you know. And if the job is to race with masks, which in hindsight I think I wouldn't do again, but you kind of try it out and you learn. And I think racing with a mask is actually extremely difficult.
Oh, it's very difficult.
It's like, so and now there's just a couple of days ago there was the first race in the area that was like USA cycling permitted, and it happened, and there were no masks required. I didn't go because I think it's just not quite the time of the year yet for me this time. But so I tried it, and again, like I'd get vaccinated tomorrow if I could, and all these things. And I try to be careful, try to minimize my contacts. Obviously, there's people who say what I'm doing is not enough, and then the same with that series. Like I think that there were some better from what I heard, there was better communication happening after.
Way after.
Instagram frenzy and cancel culture, whatever you want to call it, died down. Because you have that immediate outrage and people throwing things back and forth, and then again, that's exactly why I like to sit here right now and say we can talk about it with a little bit more distance. Because I feel like, and I said that there were a couple of people that like, oh, why don't you have this person on, that person on? It's like I'm going to do that, but maybe in like 2 or 3 months, because like it's too heated right now, and I think eventually everybody recognized it. But there were like 2 days of people yelling things back and forth, and I was kind of new to Instagram, and I'm only doing it for this. thing here, so I'm not on there that much, but I could tell it was heated, and I think there were people on both sides who were going over the line, and that's like the kind of beef in the community that happens. I think that's normal too. It needs to happen, and I can tell you that if I was in the leadership at CRCA, I would react the exact same way. I'm not though, and in some ways I'm fortunate to be not in that position sometimes where you have to be good cop, bad cop kind of, you know. You have to be, a lot of times you have to be bad cop because you have to be follow the laws and be responsible. And I think that's a hard position that I want to be like, I want to promote that because I know there aren't a lot of opportunities for people to get into bike racing without paying a lot of money and in a more relaxed, casual atmosphere with a lot of like-minded people. So, you know, the question is, how can we make these races happen? And is the answer just like someone make them official or someone keep them unofficial but smaller? Anyway, I don't want to get too philosophical about that. No, but I think that was an example of the beef in the community that can happen.
It just shows the divide in the community, man. And it shows once you pick your flag, then you're gonna want to fight for your side, and you're gonna fight to the death. And while people might have both points on each side, it just shows that we're not willing to come together, and that sucks because something like that should have a blow up, but it shouldn't be to the extent that it blew up. And it
with you,
yeah, it went from somebody throwing a race to now it being canceled. Now there was racism towards it. Now there's just problems,
right?
You know?
And then other social issues, like 2020 was a COVID year, but 2020 was also a big year on equality and racism, and obviously that comes into it because it's really easy to finger point and say, you know, CRCA is a white, rich, it's classist, maybe two club that is established, and say they are the ones now telling all the black and brown folks not to race here in the park, right? And that's an oversimplification, right? But that's kind of what some people are arguing. Basically,
that was definitely
right?
one of the major
and
arguments.
It's not what is happening on the face level, you know. Again, it's really hard for me to like I said, I've already said what I need to say. I think in terms of like where to be, and I'm fortunate enough to not be in a position, but I don't think you can do it right. But I think we could have all done better. Maybe not all of us, but a lot of us could have done better in terms of responding or acting in that moment. But I think what you point to, that it's a divide and has created a divide, is there, right?
Yeah, it's there, and it's hard to break that divide, man. And you know, I guess with platforms like ourselves, it's easier to, if people were to sit down and then just like talk about it instead of just hiding behind a keyboard. And again, like once you have that dialogue, it's much easier. Now I can understand you better. I know the tone that you're saying the things you're saying in.
Tone is a big one, yeah.
Yeah, so like it's not all caps lock.
Yeah.
Like, and that was a major
whatever.
That was a major issue. And for people that are trying to say, oh, I'm trying to be inclusive, I'm trying to let everybody, you know, grow in this community, a lot of people say it, but then don't show it. And it's hard. Like, yeah, if you're gonna shut this down, then provide ways of people of different background and descent to like be able to like learn or host something. You know, to us it was like the big brother versus little brother. And it was a hard situation because at the end of the day we're supposed to be family, but nobody's acting like it.
No, when it comes down to that, I agree. I'm kind of enjoying that we're being a little bit more critical, and I don't even have to push you that much. And I think that's exactly what people feel, right? And because I'll be honest, I think as a road racing community, we profit from the development work that is essentially being done by the fixed gear community and messenger community, because a lot of people like you naturally transition to road racing, and then we pick them up, and maybe they end up on a CRCA team, like Vince, right?
Yeah.
And
shout out to YouTube Value. I was about to join them. Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah.
And there's like YouTube Value picks up a lot of people also. I think exactly. You know, again, I can always point to others too. Like, I don't feel excluded if you didn't get mentioned. Blah blah blah. But for like a guy like Vince who came through that school that the road racing community had nothing to do with, absolutely nothing. He got attracted by it for what it is, which I totally get is cool. I think we have a cool thing going. Everybody joined, but we didn't have anything to do with like getting Vince into it. I would argue, or not much, and others like you, and you kind of got into it yourself, and you worked your way up, and you learned a lot of skills in the street and in racing friends a lot officially. And again, I think there's a way to do that safely, and as a way where we can come together as a community and think about ways of doing that, like you said, and act concretely. And it's easy for me to talk about it here too, because I'm an official position, like so whatever. People aren't even listening to this something, you know. It's like it doesn't matter.
I think it will take guys like me, Vince, and those that came from that culture to provide a good outlet and to show people of a different culture that we belong here too. Like, and for me, like I've been ridiculed because I was an alley cat racer going to the track. I've been ridiculed because I'm a track racer going to a crit. I've been ridiculed because I ride a fixed gear bike, now I'm riding gears. I've been ridiculed because I don't have the right kit on. Like, and this is just all progressions that you beat and you overcome, and then. But
does everybody? I mean, you're like able to laugh about it here now, and you're like, what did happen to you, right? And like, I think you're like, you have a good amount of confidence, or.
I had that chip on my shoulder, man.
You have that chip on your shoulder too, right?
Yeah, I was gonna prove.
Now you can laugh about it, but like, I mean, this is after like 4 or 5 years of talking about it on the podcast, and like maybe COVID helped you chill a little bit about it, but.
COVID definitely helped me chill, because right before COVID hit, I was in a dark spot, man. I was ready to beef with whoever. I was holding my flag and putting it on the ground, and you can't tell me nothing different. And then just like COVID hit, and then it's like, oh, there's bigger picture. There's I don't need to go so hard, and if I feel like I need to go so hard, maybe I could do it a different way. I don't, you know, it's. I'm of that now I need to chill out. I need to step back, realize the situation, and then come with it with a good game plan, and not just right away. Oh, F you, because you're against me, and I don't. A lot of us need to stop that.
Yeah, but it's easy, right? We have strong reactions sometimes. So again, I feel like people will say something they didn't mean in the moment, or maybe they should have put a little bit more thought behind it, or should have just swallowed it, or something like that. But we're all human in the end too, right?
For sure.
I think some of us manage better to shut up sometimes than others, and that's cool. That's okay, you know. I mean,
for sure.
I think that's also, again, like that happens in everyday work life too, and not just, you know, in the cycling community. So. You know, I think we could talk about this forever, but maybe we should start thinking about, given what you just said, if you were in charge, not that anybody is really in charge, we always say that we have this big community, and we've largely talked about the racing community today and different types of racing, but there's no mayor of the racing community. We have like an official like bike mayor for New York City, but that's much more about like advocacy and the everyday rider. In the racing community, we have our little groups. And there's some unity, but not that much. Like when Floyd Bennett almost got shut down because of increased permit fees, like the community kind of came together, and that was great. And those are the moments we hope to recreate, I think. If you're in charge, what do we need to do? What are some of the things that we can work on? Or that you would say, here's a thing that we can do or do differently? Have you thought about that much, or do you have ideas for that?
Yeah. I mean, and again, the incident last year helped me realize that we don't have programs for transition. We don't. There's nothing. You either. It's by word of mouth here, really. Like you find somebody. Like I said, the progression from being in the street to then trying to go organized. There's no bridge, and we need to start making bridges available for that to happen. I mean, it's hard. There's never any funding anywhere. You always got to raise funding. I get it. And
the city's expensive. We already talked about that. Yeah.
And you know, this is all exactly. It's expensive and all that. But I think there are resources that we can provide or that we can pull from to make the bridge a little bit easier. Because not everybody has the opportunities. And for me, like I didn't have the opportunity, and I felt like I had to keep knocking down the wall, keep knocking on doors, like, yo, I want to be here. This is my dedication. This is my commitment. And when you see somebody like that, it shouldn't be knocking me down until I prove to you. It should be like, oh, I see where you're trying to go, and here, let me not open the door for you, but let me set you on the right path. And that's kind of like what we're trying to do, especially with the race team, because my race team was, you know, mostly minority from the street, and we're just trying to give an outlet to show you that, you know, it's more than alley cat racing.
Yeah.
There's different levels to this, and through my experiences, I can show you how I went through it, and I can give you sort of example how to go through it.
Yeah.
And if I was the man, I'll just try to bridge those two communities. I mean, there was no bigger divide than the CRCA thing, and that let you show who was street, who was not, who was for the underground racing, and who was not.
Yeah.
And for everyone that says, "Oh, we need to be more inclusive," that's the way you do it, man. You don't finger point, you analyze, and you take the time, and you guys come together.
Yeah.
The finger pointing is the first thing that everybody does, and we just got to stop trying to prove ourselves right first, and then F everybody else. Because if you don't see it my way, we need an understanding, and that's how we move forward with minorities, with women, with all kind of equality. Like this, that's the next step. That's the next step, and you know, there's people in power that, for one way or another, maybe they're too busy, they don't see it, or you know, they'll always have their excuses. But like, if I was mayor, that's what I'll start doing. That I'll start holding clinics where I'll get a couple Cat 1s from different backgrounds and stuff, different teams, and now we get Cat 5s and juniors who just want to try out, because you know, you have to start somewhere, and that's where I would start.
So more of those kind of transition programs that you're getting into bike racing that is open to everybody. Really
hosting more
nice
seminars
people.
or something, where I get like real Cat 1s to talk to, and like show how they went through it. And
so workshops, clinics, like race clinics, like maybe even not even on the bike, but on the bike ideally, something like that.
Yeah,
that'd be pretty awesome. I agree with you.
For sure.
I'd be happy to host one or like co-host one or whatever.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, I think as we're reopening and maybe we won't have racing immediately, it might be a good time to do it with so many people who are supposedly on bikes. So yeah.
And especially like if we have an event like a track racing or something where you can spend 15 minutes before or after a race just getting to know each other and just, hey man, you got any questions? What's your question, man? Yeah, because it's intimidating, man. It's intimidating, and like I said, when I used to show up, I just got my Bianchi Super Pista, and I didn't have a full kit, and I would try to ask my questions, and just having that guy on the road was like, don't bother me. And you know, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, and it's such a automatically hierarchical sport with the categories, right? Where you're like, oh, this guy is like a god because he's a Cat 1. It's like, no, I just think I'm the right dude. You just spend some more time, you know, on the bike, and that's how you build the credibility. And it's, again, similar to a job. Once you've been in a job for 10 years, people think you know everything. It's not always the case. You just have spent the time.
And I'm glad I've been able, through the podcast, I'm glad I've been able to like get humbled repeatedly, because like, you know, meeting all different peoples, meeting different experiences, it just helps you learn even way more. And so shout out to that.
Absolutely. So I'm really hoping that you guys can keep that going.
For sure.
I usually end on with like community issues, goals. We've talked about that. Racing goals.
Racing goals. So
what you got? Do you think you feel motivated again?
Yeah. I'm definitely gonna feel motivated again. I'm looking into a road bike to get again, and like I do have my track bikes ready to go. So if anybody wants to smoke on the track bike, come see me in Central. But word. You know, my goal was to be Cat 1, at least on the track by the age of 35. And this year I turned 35. So, you know, while we missed a whole year that I could have like gone to Cat 1, I guess that's still my goal. See where racing comes back, and hopefully, you know, hopefully my points last. Because I don't know how they're gonna.
I think they do. Yeah, I don't know the track upgrades rules in all detail because.
So before.
We talked about this before.
Yeah, before in track, like you used to lose half your points going into the next season.
Okay.
Yeah. Then you have to start all over.
They should have a code rule.
Right. I don't know. Pandemic. We'll see where we're at.
Or you just got to get good again and do it all in 1 year.
That's it.
That's the goal, right?
And that's how I usually did it from road, which only took me a year. I went from 5 to 3, and then on the track, I went from 4 to 2. both in one season. So like,
That's good.
Yeah.
You had a good year there.
I'm telling you, from 2017 to about 2019, every race I did was a podium race.
Wow.
Yeah, every
Good.
race.
I
It didn't
didn't
matter
realize that, okay.
which discipline. I was on the top step. Not all the time, but I was on one of those steps.
Yeah,
I was on one of those steps.
Hey, I mean, that's a big result though, every time. I mean, that consistency is big.
And before our first jacket, instead of having the logo in the front, we had it in the back. And you would see me. I would wear my jacket like almost not inside out, but reversed. So that way I had the cat when I held my hands up. Because like I told you, we from the streets and I'm going to keep that. Like, word.
I'll look out for some podium pictures from you there. I'll try to
for
find
sure.
that maybe. I'll put that on for the episode.
Definitely in
Alright.
casino.
Definitely in casino. Okay.
Definitely casino. Word.
Jason Colón, ladies and gentlemen. We could talk for hours, but we got to end it somewhere.
Word.
But I think the message here is very loud and clear to the community. And again, listen to his podcast, Cat 6 Chismes, CHISMES.
Wow.
Find it everywhere you find podcasts.